The time is here, that time every week where we start talking about tight ends, the football kind. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well, and here it is. Tight ends, the football kind, week 4 edition is here. Talking about some tight ends and seeing who we can trust and who we should start and sit here for the week 4 week of fantasy football. I just said week 4 week. Makes no sense, no logical English sense, but who cares? You know what I mean. And I'm not going to take a whole lot of time before we get into this list of tight ends. But before I do, make sure you're going over, checking out the RotoBaller channel after this video is over. Click that subscribe button. Trust me, you don't want to miss the content over there. But for now, we're talking tight ends, the football kind. Let's kick it off with a Thursday night game where we got the Vikings at the Rams. So talking about Kyle Rudolph, probably one of the more consistent tight ends so far this year, averaged about 12.5 fantasy points per game in PPR leagues. The only issue with Kyle Rudolph is he usually doesn't score his points to the fourth quarter. So by then you're usually totally stressed out, pulling your hair out, thinking about dropping or trading him because he hasn't done anything all game. And then all of a sudden he gets involved and ends with a decent stat line. I don't know why that's happening. I don't understand why it's happening. But they are going up against the Rams. Remember, the Rams there in week 1 gave up 180 yards to Jared Cook. I do like Kyle Rudolph this week, and he will continue to start on a week-by-week basis. I'm just hoping he starts getting involved a little bit earlier than the fourth quarter. I got enough gray hair. I don't need any more. For the Rams, you got Tyler Higbee. And yep, I don't know who he is either, so let's not even talk about him. Moving to the Sunday games now, so you got the Jets at the Jaguars being the first game. And you have, let's see, for the Jets, I have no idea. I mean, at least I knew Tyler Higbee's name. The Jets? I got nothing. Don't start them. On the Jaguars side of the ball, you got one of those guys with an acronym for a name. ASJ, Austin Seferian-Jenkins. He's been dealing with a core muscle injury here for a few weeks and just hasn't really produced. And it's still bothering him. It's nothing that's just going to go away here overnight. If he is your only option, I would cross my fingers, close my eyes, and say a prayer to the fantasy gods that he gets a red zone touchdown. But I don't have a whole lot of faith in ASJ right now. He should probably be rostered in most leagues, but I'm not starting him this week unless I have no other choice. Moving on to the Dolphins and Patriots. Start off with the Dolphins and Mike Gesicki. So, hey, I actually know the names of both tight ends for both teams in this one. Perfect. However, Mike Gesicki really isn't relevant yet. Not in redraft, season-long leagues. Not somebody you're going to roster yet. He did have his best game of the season here last week. 3 catches for 31 yards. They get the Patriots. They're going to continue to throw. I don't know if I'm trusting Mike Gesicki yet, though. Gronk being next for the Patriots, and absolutely you're starting Gronk. I mean, if the dude had, one leg, I would probably still start Gronk. Yeah, you're starting him. Eagles and Titans now, and the Eagles seem to be going with their 2 tight end set here at times with Carson Wentz. Had Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz both with over 70 yards last week, and they look like they could coexist. Now, as far as a weekly safe start, I'm going with Zach Ertz. I'm not going that way with Dallas Goedert yet. Maybe in super deep leagues, bye-week replacements, nothing on waivers. Possibly you can go with Dallas then, but no, Zach Ertz is the tight end to own in this offense, and he's going to be one of Carson Wentz's favorite targets as the season goes on. I'm definitely starting Zach Ertz this week. On the Titans side of the football, you have Luke Stalker. If you haven't seen the guy, he probably looks like the guy who did your taxes last year. And with that being said, I have no interest in starting him as a tight end in the NFL, especially with the quarterback situation in Tennessee. Please don't start Luke Stalker. Moving on to the Texans and the Colts. Starting off with the Texans, you got, Ryan Griffin. Another guy. Not interested. Pass. For the Colts, you have Jack Doyle and Eric Ebron. Now, it sounds like Jack Doyle will not play again this week as of right now. Eric Ebron also came out of that game with a few injuries, and he didn't practice today either. Something we need to watch throughout the week. If Doyle sits and Ebron is a go, though, I will start Eric Ebron. He did have a team high in targets last week, and is somebody that they tried to get the ball to, didn't quite work out, but has huge touchdown upside in that offense. I would start Eric Ebron if Jack Doyle sits out again. Bills-Packers are next, and for the Bills, you got Charles Clay. And if you really want to put somebody in your starting lineup who has a total of 4 catches for 47 yards this year, go for it. Personally, I'm not doing it. Jimmy Graham on the opposite side there for the Green Bay Packers. Somebody else who we need to watch this week. He's on the injury report again. Doesn't sound like he's in any danger of missing the game, but it is something we need to pay attention to. If he plays, if he starts, And as long as Aaron Rodgers has a pulse, you start Jimmy Graham just because there's not a whole lot of other options out there for the tight end. If you guys haven't noticed yet, we don't even know some of these guys' names. So yeah, if you got Jimmy Graham and he's good to go, then you're starting him. In another battle of teams who we don't care about their tight ends, let's talk about the Lions and the Cowboys. First for the Lions, you got Luke. I'm so cool. I have 2 L's in my last name, Wilson. Yeah, he's not getting a whole lot of work there. You got Kenny Galladay, Marvin Jones, Golden Tate. There's not a whole lot left for Luke. I have 2 L's in my last name, Wilson, and I'm not starting him. On the Cowboys side of the ball, you have Jeff Swaim. Last week, Jeff Swaim had 5 catches for 47 yards. Was the best game of the season for him so far. I'm not really buying the whole Jeff Swaim anything right now. Please tell me, please tell me, people, you are not considering starting Jeff Swaim. Tampa Bay Bucks and Chicago Bears are next, and Tampa Bay is one of these ones where you're kind of going to have to just take a guess. Personally, I like O.J. Howard a little bit more. He's more of a Fitzmagic type of tight end, and he looks for him more often. Brait was the favorite target of Jameis Winston. Now, Brait did have a touchdown last week, but the bulk of the targets and yardage went O.J. Howard's way. I expect that to continue. However, we need to monitor what's going on in Tampa Bay with the quarterback position. Does Jameis come back? Is it Fitzpatrick? If you're asking me, I think Fitzpatrick needs to stay, and if that's the case, I'm going to start O.J. Howard and sit Cameron Brait. For the Bears, you got Trey Burton, and Trey Burton hasn't done a whole lot like we were expecting here earlier in the season. Anthony Miller being out, though, may force more targets his way, and if that increased volume, heads his direction, he has the potential to put up better numbers. I'm also going to start Trey Burton this week. Like I said, lack of options, Trey Burton has the upside, plus we know his name, so let's start him. Bengals and Falcons are next, and we've talked about them in other episodes, how we expect a lot of offense in this game. So we'll start off with the Bengals and Tyler Eifert. Tyler Eifert hasn't looked half bad. He hasn't gone out and done anything spectacular, but he's been a solid piece of the passing offense for Andy Dalton and the Cincinnati Bengals. Plus, he's made it 3 weeks without an injury. It's like a miracle. If you have Tyler Eifert, I'm starting him this week against an Atlanta Falcons defense that is just decimated by injuries right now. For the Falcons, you have Austin Hooper. I usually refer to him as Austin Pooper because that's what he does most of the time. Not a whole lot for my fantasy team. He's boom or bust, hit or miss, and to me, too risky to put in my starting lineup at any time. I don't care if there's bye weeks involved or not. I'm going to sit Austin Hooper. Seahawks and Cardinals are next up on the list, and we'll start off with the Seahawks talking about Will Dissly. Somebody who kind of shot up, some rankings here to begin the year, scoring touchdowns the first 2 weeks and was starting to make a name for himself. And then he came out week 3 and had 1 catch for 4 yards, and everybody remembered, hey, this is Will Dissly. We don't know who the heck he really is. Were the first 2 weeks a fluke? Possibly, but he does have the upside in an offense that doesn't have a whole lot of weapons. And they're going into Arizona, who has one of the worst defenses in football. I would literally start the dude sitting in section 212, ordering a foot-long hot dog at tight end for the Seahawks this week. Yes, I'm going to start Will Dissly, unless for some reason you have another stud on your bench. I'm firing him up. As for the Cardinals, you have one of those other guys with an acronym, Ricky Seals-Jones, and now we're in the Josh Rosen era for the Arizona Cardinals. It can't get any worse than it was last week for the Josh Rosen-led Cardinals, and I don't know if I'm really ready to trust RSJ just yet. Give it a few weeks. Let's find out what Rosen's got and who he's really going to target. If you're asking me, I'm expecting a lot more Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald than I am RSJ, and I'm going to sit him here in week 4. Browns and Raiders are next, so you have Njoku and Cook coming up, and I like both of these guys this week. Both of them are going to be starts. Really like the Cleveland Browns offense now that it's being led by Baker Mayfield. It looks energetic. It looks explosive. One of Baker Mayfield's favorite positions to throw to in college was the tight end. I expect a huge bump in value for David Njoku, and he's definitely a start for me here in week 4. Jared Cook next on the list for the Oakland Raiders here, and listen, last week was his worst week of the season. He had 5 catches for 31 yards, not a whole lot. But he's been somewhat consistent in this offense that has been inconsistent as a whole. He's been one of Derek Carr's favorite targets, and they're going to have to throw the ball to score on the Cleveland Browns. It's just weird to say because it's the Cleveland Browns, but this team is going to be much improved here for the rest of the season. I'm still starting Jared Cook. I don't trust Amari Cooper, and I don't trust Jordy Nelson. Therefore, put your trust in Cook, and I'm starting him here in week 4. Saints and Giants are next, so we're talking about Father Time himself, Ben Watson for the New Orleans Saints, and now Rhett Ellison for the New York Giants, being that Evan Ingram is going to be out for a few weeks, which hurts. If you had Evan Ingram, please put him on your bench. He is not playing. But back to Ben Watson, he's one of Drew Brees' most trusted targets. He hasn't had that big game yet, but if you're looking for a bye week replacement or you're suffering from some injuries, Ben Watson is somebody you can plug in and get yourself a safe play. He doesn't have the super high ceiling, but he does have a pretty safe high floor, and somebody I would trust here in week 4. The New York Jets secondary is very underrated. Hoping that Ben Watson can find some space there across the middle of the field, get himself a few catches, give you a productive week 4, and hopefully get you through these injuries and bye weeks. As far as Rhett Ellison goes, please don't consider starting Rhett Ellison. This is going to be more of an Odell Beckham, Sterling Shepard, Saquon Barkley type of day. Rhett Ellison is a total crapshoot, and I don't know if I'm willing to risk it that much. 49ers and Chargers are next, and the injury to Jimmy G really hurt the 49ers offense. But if I do trust anybody in that offense going forward, especially as a pass-catching position, it's going to be George Kittle. It's somebody who C.J. Beathard's used to throwing to. He has chemistry with George Kittle, and he's somebody who can continue this breakout season and put up some solid numbers for you. I have no issue starting George Kittle this week in week 4. For the Chargers, you got Antonio Gates, possibly the only guy older than Ben Watson. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Antonio Gates took passes from Dan Fouts back in the day. That's how long he's been around. Probably not, but you get my point. I'm not starting Antonio Gates yet. Yes, he's been somewhat productive on a very low scale, but it's just too inconsistent. You can't count on it. The resurgence or insurgence or whatever surgence you want to talk about of Mike Williams is taking away whatever upside that Antonio Gates could have had. Williams is scoring some touchdowns. They haven't really relied on Keenan Allen much. I expect a little bit more from him in the coming weeks, and I'm not starting Antonio Gates. Ravens and Steelers next up for the Sunday night game. You got a bunch of young tight ends there in Baltimore, none of which I'm starting. They have a bunch of potential, but none of them, not a single one of them anyway, is highly involved enough to trust on a week-by-week basis as of yet. So I'm passing on everybody in Baltimore. Probably going to pass on everybody in Pittsburgh also. You got Vance McDonald and Jesse James. Jesse James was the number 1 fantasy tight end for the first 2 weeks of the season. Came out and did nothing in week 3. And Vance McDonald looked like the second coming of a Mack truck playing football. One of the greatest stiff arms I've ever seen, especially from a tight end, and had the long touchdown play. The problem is this week, who is it going to be? Is it James or is it Vance McDonald? If I had to choose one, I'm going to say Vance McDonald, just because the stiff arm was amazing. But that's literally how much of a crapshoot it is. Play at your own risk here. Neither one of them are a slam dunk, but if I had to pick one personally, it'd be Vance McDonald this week. For Monday Night Football, you got the Chiefs at the Broncos. Not going to spend a whole lot of time on Travis Kelce. Yes, you're starting Travis Kelce. For the Broncos, though, you got Jake Butt. And I saw you giggle out there when I said his last name. His last name is literally Butt. And he's got potential. He just doesn't have the volume yet to be productive. The only thing I can say about him is if you're in a 10 or a 12-man league, I'm not starting him at all. However, if you're in one of these larger leagues, 14, 16 teams, somebody's on bye, somebody's hurt, and you're just looking for a lottery ticket that really doesn't have, any ownership out there, Jake Butt may be a solid option for you. They're going to have to throw the ball in Denver. They're going to have to throw it to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, to even have a chance at the Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to have to do it through the air. And, Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders should have a good game. If Jake Butt was going to have one, this is the week it may be. I'm just not willing to risk it in these smaller leagues. The larger leagues, deeper leagues only, and that's about it. So those are all the tight end matchups here for week 4. Hopefully that was somewhat helpful to get you guys in there to set your lineups. I know there's not a whole lot of options for tight end. It's a little thin out there, and there's not a whole lot of slam dunk, surefire tight end ones. You never know what you're going to get from a lot of these guys, and that's how it's going to be all season long. But hey, I really appreciate the support. Channel is still growing like crazy, and that's because of you guys. Make sure you guys are liking, commenting, subscribing. I look forward to hearing from you. I'll answer as many comments as possible, but be sure you guys are helping each other out. Let's continue to grow this community, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.